spin it again.
It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles, or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena.
You know what, I've heard people call, and I kind of like it, the era that we're in, the post-truth kind of era.
And lately there's been a lot of coverage in the real news about the growing and booming business of creating fake news.
Well, I don't know, maybe he was watching CNN fake news. What do you think?
You are fake news.
Sir.
Go ahead.
Let us return to the fight. This battle is far from over.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another edition of Real News. It is 9:03 in the morning. It's July 13th. That's a Monday morning. My name is Mr. Henry. David Shine Thompson sitting over there to my left. Could be your right, flying in like a ninja as he normally does on this program. How was everybody's weekend, man? How y'all doing out there? What are you getting into? What stories are you following? We have a jam-packed show today for you. Actually, we're going to do something a little bit new on this program here on this Monday as well. After we get through some of these local stories, I'm going to go through sort of like a weekend recap, if you will, you know, just sort of like a mass sort of conglomeration of headlines that that actually USA Today compiled for us, but it's got a lot of good stories chalked back in there. Hey, David Shine Thompson, buddy, how was your weekend? What have you been up to, man? You doing all right over there?
Nice.
That's nice, huh? Hey, man, it was all right. I did some work stuff, man. We're getting ready for this property tax ballot sort of referendum push going on. We're trying to get the most number of signatures that we possibly can. We need 10% of the overall vote, which usually equates somewhere around 5,000, let's call it. But we're trying to get at least about 10,000 at the minimum signatures out here in the Middle Tennessee area. So we're kicking that off this week, man. Kicking that off. We got something going on Tuesday. Thinking about doing a call bank on Thursday. We're hitting all the major early voting precincts on Friday with some booths out there. Try to get people to sign up. Maybe record some videos of what they're doing. It should be a good time, man. Should be a very, very good time. So if you're in the Middle Tennessee area, if you're in the Davidson County area in particular, you want to help us out with some of that, reach out to me, get in contact. Let me know that you want to get involved in this fight, and we will get you plugged in any way we possibly can. Hey, let's dive straight on into the show this morning, though, because there's a lot of stuff we got to get to here. First local headline, just something that happened over the weekend here in Nashville. I just want to know if this major problem in Knoxville as well. Did you guys have any storms out there your way, Shine, over the weekend, last night in particular, yesterday?
Just the regular kind.
Okay.
Nothing too serious.
Okay. All right. Yeah, it seems like anytime a major storm or any kind of like, you know, storm in general comes through here, there's always such a major problem with power outages. And I haven't quite figured out the Nashville area enough yet, Shine, to understand why this might be. I know in Louisville, for example, though, any single time that anything froze, and this is going to sound weird, but literally any time that anything froze, you would inevitably have power outages for several days at a time. And it doesn't necessarily logically follow. So just freezing in general, what are you talking about? Like rain? How does that follow to power outages, man? Because it freezes the branches, and these branches on these trees were so insanely old. And apparently they never took time to cut anything away from the extra power lines. The branches would fall and just snap everything. I mean, how many times, Gabby, right? Like literally she's shaking her head wherever there. Yeah, every single season, man, multiple times throughout the season, you'd have power outages when stuff froze because those branches were knocking down. Anyways, all that just to say the thunderstorms left thousands in Nashville Electric customers without power on Sunday around 6:30 a.m. Nashville Electric reported more than 14,000 customers without power by 5 a.m. There were 4,700 customers. Just 2 p.m. there were over 200 customers. So they do a good job of getting it turned back on, man. Just didn't know if you guys had any other problems out your way in East Tennessee or if it even matters. But hey, that other story reported on last week, I gave y'all some preview here as well, saying you're going to start to see this in other cities across the United States, talking about bar owners in particular here in Nashville, but business owners, I would predict in other cities, sort of taking preemptive action, trying to say, hey, this whole sort of shutdown, this quarantine shutdown, this forced mask mandate, whatever you want to say, may or may not be causing us harm. Well, there was a temporary restraining order that was pushed through by honky-tonk bar owners that apparently will not be granted. Now, that's not places, the more quickly we can reopen all our businesses without interruption. Don't share your air, Nashville. The more often we wear masks in public places, the more quickly we can reopen our businesses without interruption. And these bar owners, they motioned for a temporary restraining order filed recently in U.S. District Court. If you don't know what this story is, let me catch you up real quick, and then I'll go back to the reason why I brought this story up to begin with. The bar owners motion for a temporary restraining order filed recently in U.S. District Court for Middle District of Tennessee, one of the largest challenges to the city's COVID-19 restrictions. As of Sunday, Nashville has more than 5,000 active cases of coronavirus and 141 deaths that are attributed to the illness. Now, in the federal filing, plaintiffs were seeking a restraining order against Cooper and Nashville Director of Health, Dr. Michael Caldwell, and the Metro Beer Board. That's interesting, too. They say that they'd suffered harm after being forced to close their establishments due to the pandemic. Now, some of the bars involved included the following: the local, Kid Rock's Honky Tonk, and the Steakhouse in Honky Tonk Central. Now, attorney Brian Lewis, he's the guy who's representing these plaintiffs here. He said that they do plan to move forward with their case. Here's what he said, saying, quote, "We are disappointed with the ruling, but understand and respect the judge's decision. We will be vigorously prosecuting the case and will more than likely move for additional injunctive relief as the facts develop in discovery." Now, here's the reason why I brought this story up. If I can go back, follow along with the show notes. If I can go back to the red highlighted portion there. By the way, if you follow along in the show notes, the Evernote links to the top of the shows every single day. That's the best way to follow any of the stories that we're talking about. It's how, we're running the show here on our end as well. Anytime you see something that's in red italicized portion like that, that's usually my thoughts. And I'm sometimes orally dictating this, so don't knock me on terrible grammar because I know that it's there. But as I read Mayor Cooper's statement last night saying the following: Judge Register's ruling affirms Metro's approach in fighting coronavirus and keeping Nashvillians safe, going on to say, quote, "Don't share your air, Nashville. The more often we wear masks in public places, the more quickly we can reopen all our businesses without interruption." And I don't know, man, it just gave me a bit of pause for a second, because the way that premise works, I suppose, all right, so if we only would have known about this mask thing before, I suppose what follows that statement is that is Mayor Cooper even insinuating then, or am I just improperly inferring that Mayor Cooper is basically saying we could have avoided the first shutdown altogether had we had known how effective masks were? I mean, I don't follow necessarily. And this isn't even necessarily to say, you all know how I feel in the mask thing. I talk to my wife about this all the time. I talk to y'all about this all the time. I personally think, in a scientific sense, it's arguably the correct thing to do. I think the science is there to support it. I think the doctors are there to support it. I think it's the courteous thing to do to your fellow man. But that's just my personal opinion. I could say the same thing about vaccines, possibly, but that's also just my personal opinion. Anytime it delves into the realm of the government forcing you to do something, we have a totally different conversation there. But I do wonder here, given some of this stuff, man, it's like when Mayor Cooper comes out and says, all right, so the more often we wear masks in public places, the more quickly we can reopen this business. All right, well, where was that conversation during the first shutdown? Nobody heard anything about masks during that point. And I'm wondering, dude, is it just that the WHO and the CDC hadn't made their mind up on this yet? I mean, it can't be that simple, right? I don't know, or maybe it is just that simple. I mean, I don't know. Maybe more likely it's that everyone has agreed that a second shutdown isn't feasible. I think that's what's actually going on. What's actually happening here is that we saw the economic catastrophe that came out of the first shutdown, and I think people are thinking to themselves, there is no way a second shutdown is economically feasible, regardless of the potential health risk. It just can't be done again for a couple reasons. Economically speaking, it would be disastrous. And aside from the economics behind it, people just aren't going to comply. They're just not going to. Whether that's right or wrong doesn't matter. The simple fact of the matter is that people will not comply with a second shutdown. Half the country has said as much. So if people aren't going to comply, I don't know, man, maybe you just go with something where you try and figure out the best possible case scenario of all these things. I think that's what's actually going on here. Is I think some of the leadership has recognized, we kind of wasted that sky is falling type thing. And maybe it wasn't a waste. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe the shutdown actually did something to I don't know, lower the curve, squelch the curve, push that down a little bit. We certainly didn't overwhelm the health industry. I know that much. Our hospitals weren't overwhelmed. Maybe the mask is just some type of attempt to mitigate some of the potential health concerns because this thing is kind of here to stay. And we have to figure out a way to operate with it until there is some other version of a solution, be it a vaccine or herd immunity or whatever it is. I don't pretend to understand this science world. But that's what I wanted to kick off to the Real News audience this morning before we get into these national update headline stories. Is those things right there, those simple questions of like, look, man, if we would have known about this mask situation, if it is as effective as everyone is saying it is, or at least let's forget about the science for a second, okay? Let's just deal with the media narrative then, if you want to. That's a totally maybe it's a conversation we get our heads around a little bit more. If the narrative for wearing masks had been there as much as it is now as back then, you get what I'm saying? Would we have still had the shutdown? I think so. But I'm also just trying to come at this as logically as possible, man. I do think what's actually going on is people are just saying like a second shutdown is not feasible. So therefore, we have to add something else in between there. Let me know what you think about that in the comments section. I had the unified chat up here. Speaking of the unified chat, when I say that word, it's this awesome little program that our boy Shine turned us on to because we're broadcasting right now on Facebook, Mixer, YouTube, Twitch, a couple other places. The best way to find all that at the same time, by the way, is realnewsradio.live, realnewsradio.live. We're broadcasting a lot of across a couple different places here. And as we're doing that, this one unified chat section can show me if you're commenting from Facebook or YouTube or Twitch or whatever. And if I'm being completely frank with everybody in the audience here, I think Sean and I would prefer to move some of this audience off of Facebook. It's comfortable now because that's where we started it. Facebook is not exactly kind to our ideology. To the worldview that we espouse on this program, Facebook doesn't exactly agree with most of the time. So we're trying, if I'm being totally sincere, we're trying to migrate some of this audience into different areas. So whatever, man, take with that and do with it what you will. If you feel so inclined one day to be so bold to jump over to something else, man, by all means, we'd love you for it. Whatever. YouTube, maybe, I don't know what it is for you. Let me hit some of these comments, though, as I transition into these national headlines here. Matt says, how does Hong Kong only have 7 deaths for cases? Masks, ha ha ha, right, a piece of fabric. Yeah. Kelly says, did you all see that they in all caps there, are trying to say that, oh yeah, I saw that headline you posted this morning, Kelly. Kelly posted a headline this morning, and I should have just pulled it up on our Facebook page here, but it was a headline that essentially said, like, hey, AC in your home can aid to the transmission of COVID-19, but if you just open a window, it'll take care of itself. Then apparently AC in your home will spread the transmission of COVID-19, but if you just open a window, then it'll be fine. So Kelly
does it have to be facing east, and do you have to sprinkle cinnamon on the sill as well, or something like that?
I don't know. She goes on to say maybe we should be wearing masks in our home. I mean, I don't know, man. Wouldn't be the craziest thing to hear. What'd you say, guys? Gabi's giving me commentary from it. That was funny. Anyways, she doesn't like the mask mandate either, just so y'all know. Matt says, where in science does a dirty sock on your face stop a microscopic germ? Matt says, dude, all this is BS. This is how they are dismantling the country and walking us through a bankruptcy. Now, the bankruptcy thing is a very interesting aspect of the story that not a lot of people are talking about right now either. And frankly speaking, I don't pretend to understand enough economics to really get my head around what's going on with the whole coin shortage and stuff. And I can only assume, not even prison, but I can only assume that that's what Matt is talking about here. It's just sort of like we're gradually leading ourselves into, I don't know, man, some type of run the bank situation or something, some type of hyperinflation situation. I don't know. I just know that's what a lot of people I've seen the headlines predicting that this corn shortage is sort of indicative of an oncoming hyperinflation situation. Now, the veracity of that statement, I frankly don't know. I'd have to get someone in this program that knows far more about economics than I do. And there's some people I can reach out to if you wanted to do that. Let me jump into some national headlines here as we're going through the show notes. This is from USA Today. They do a decent job of just compiling a bunch of stories over the weekend. The main story for today I want to get to, just so I'm not hiding this ball on y'all, in about 5 to 10 minutes here, I really want to run through Trump commuting the Roger Stone sentence. And then over the weekend, man, Joe Jorgensen, Libertarian presidential candidate, tweeted something out that just like caused the Libertarian vein of Twitter to lose their minds. And I say that like I'm making fun of them. I don't. I think it's just the Libertarians were genuinely trying to what's the best way to phrase this? Properly parse out what she meant to represent with her tweet. I think they were just trying to get their head around, as libertarians, how much do we support a sort of social justice cause to the exclusion of our principles? Now, that sounds strange, and I'm not trying to mischaracterize that here. That's exactly what happened. Here's the tweet, just so y'all know, and then I'll get back to some other headlines. This is her tweet, quote, "It is not enough to be passively not racist. We must be actively anti-racist. Hashtag Black Lives Matter. Hashtag vote gold." One more time. It is not enough to be passively not racist. We must be actively anti-racist. It's a very strange way to phrase that. Whatever. Hashtag Black Lives Matter. Hashtag vote gold. Now, it was that phraseology coupled with the hashtag Black Lives Matter that caused libertarians to really just become confused over the weekend. Quick tease on that. I just want to let people marinate with that, because there's a lot of libertarians that watch the show. Being libertarian leaning myself, at least in political philosophy, that's a lot of what we dictate through this program as well. So I would like some audience reaction as you're getting your head around that. Here's some headlines over the weekends, though. The weekends. Walt Disney World reopened to the public. And by the way, if you're following along with the show notes here, you can either click the USA Today link, or every one of these links in the article is in the show notes. Everything underlined there is actually hyperlinked as well. But Walt Disney reopened the public Saturday morning in Florida, the same day that the state reported the largest single-day increase in positive COVID-19 cases at 15,300. So I don't know, man. It's just like, it's kind of what I said before with that Nashville article. It's a little bit of what I said before with that Nashville article of just like, I don't know, dude. I don't know. I think what's really happening here is that people are realizing, leadership is realizing, whoever you want to say is possibly realizing a second shutdown is just not feasible. So what do we do in the meantime? Disney's probably one of those same people. You see President Donald Trump over the weekend. This happened on Friday, but it was the weekend's news cycle. He commuted Roger Stone's 40-month sentence. My quick take on that, because we're going to get to this story much, much deeper here in just a second. My quick take on this is like, dude, I don't know, man. Who does anyone actually really care about this? And should we? I'm wondering. Because I think this is the breaking headline story about Roger Stone. Just if that's going to shatter the internet all of a sudden about some, I don't know, nefarious dealings in the White House or something. It's like, okay, bro, do we really need to play this whataboutism game to go back through the number of individuals that Barack Obama commuted sentences for and the kinds of individuals that either Clinton or Bush commuted sentences for? I mean, I have that data in the show notes, and that's probably what we're going to do today. If you really want to play the whataboutism game, what I'm basically saying, though, is unless someone's going to be ideologically pure and consistent the entire time about it being problematic for presidents to commute sentences, then we probably can't have an honest conversation anyways. So your frustration is not founded well, is what I'm saying. Whoever might be frustrated with the idea that Trump would commute Roger Stone's sentence, like we didn't see that coming from 20 miles away. Come on, man. Let's see here. Another story is that that actress that played on Glee, I think that's who that is. Search to find actress Naya Rivera in Southern California lake resumes Sunday as authorities continue to check the waters surrounding buildings and shores. This story apparently is that actress, she was on Glee. She had her and her son rented some boat out in Southern California, and apparently, like I don't know much of the story. Apparently, she just went missing. The boat and the son turned up later, but I think you haven't found her yet. It's a terribly tragic story. Here's another headline that people are reading and hearing about over the weekend. I love. This is part of the reason why I pulled it from USA Today, because we can have fun chuckling at the way that they just present these headlines. A Washington NFL team. How dare you say the Redskins? How dare you? Golly. A Washington NFL team. You know what? Screw it, man. That should be their name, okay? You don't even get the right to rename your name anymore. You just get to call yourself the Washington NFL team. That's it. Done. Wipe your hands clean. I made the decision for all of us. All right? You're just now Washington NFL team. That's it. Anyways, the Redskins, okay? Just less than 2 weeks after one of its most prominent corporate sponsors urged them to change the name of his football team, Washington owner Daniel Snyder plans to announce the retirement of the Redskins nickname and reveal a new team name Monday morning. I have no idea what it's going to be. As for right now, it's just the Washington NFLs. Now, this is not the first time this happened either. We had this exact same conversation a couple years back. Actually, if you remember, there was an entire 2 episodes solely devoted to the Washington. It was an underlying theme, a running theme throughout an entire season of South Park, a couple seasons back. An entire 1 or 2 episodes solely devoted to this issue. the South Park boys had a lot of fun with it because apparently the Redskins gave up the copyright to the Redskins, and the boys from South Park took the Redskins name and made a company out of it, which I think is just fantastic. And they made a company where the company did nothing at all. That was the purpose of the company. The purpose of the company was to have like a bunch of these shareholder meetings where they would just get a bunch of funds from everybody else. It was like a GoFundMe type thing, okay? We're just like, I'll take your money and do nothing with it at all. I'll do nothing. That's the purpose of the company, is to do nothing. So you fund my ability to do nothing. It was like GoFundMe, meet the Redskins. There was a bunch of stuff, man. It's good stuff. But Monday morning, a person with knowledge of the situation confirmed this to USA Today that the new name remains unknown. But Warriors, Red Wolves, and the Red Tails have ranked among the most popular choices so far. I mean, come on, dude, like, is no one going to have a problem with Red Wolves or Red Tails or Warriors? You're not going to hear from PETA about that? I mean, you're not going to hear from Warriors about something? I don't know, dude. Like, you're going to have just as much of a problem. And here's the other interesting thing about this Redskin situation. Look, man, I haven't looked this up in a couple of years, but I do know when this controversy was first going around, there was some person that actually took it upon themselves to go interview a bunch of people, a bunch of actual Native Americans, asking them about this name. And apparently the vast majority of Native Americans that are interviewed about this name find pride in the name. They don't mind the name, or they think it's an okay or good thing. I don't know, man, but I don't know if that
or they know the
matters
history of it too, that they worked with like several different nations of Native Americans to come up with the logo and all the different stuff. Like, it wasn't like some artist sat in a room and whatever. They like worked with a bunch of Native American tribes to come up with all the branding and whatever. But that's neither here nor there now, right?
By the way, I know we just jumped off this mass story, but the comment from John caught my attention a second ago. He said, "At work now, they say if we see an official vehicle come up." That's interesting. There's also some stories about race in America here. Tucker Carlson, tonight, I believe he's going to be expecting to address one of his top writers that had, racist or sexist comments in some, like, I don't know, blog or something like this. I don't know what it was, man. It was some message board exchange that's primarily meant for law school students. Now, I don't even know if the guy was a law school student or not. I know I think it was Dartmouth undergrad or something like that. But apparently he said some, openly racist stuff. And I'll be honest, y'all, like, it took me a good 3 or 4 articles worth of reading about this to even find what the guy said. Everybody else, from the New York Times to the Washington Post, was just reporting on, like, obscenely racist comments. Well, what are they? What are the comments that were made that were so obscenely racist? Anyways, some of them, were fairly racist, man. They were. You're going to have to go do your own research on that, because I didn't want to get kicked off Facebook for saying them on air. But you can go find these things if you want to. Apparently, he had to step down, and now it's supposedly or allegedly tarnishing Tucker Carlson's reputation. I don't know, bro. He's the most watched person in news right now. Do you think anybody, it's really going to touch him that much? Seriously? He's going to address it tonight. And the other interesting wrinkle about this here is even what the USA Today is reporting on this entire thing, saying Fox News host Tucker Carlson expected to address the racist and sexist comments of now former writer Blake Nelf, which they were, admittedly, sure. Whatever, says on Monday's Tucker Carlson tonight. According to an email sent from Fox News leadership to its employees, that's what they said about the thing. Here's the story. CNN reported Friday that this guy, Blake Neff, had been using a pseudonym for years to post on Auto Admit. It's an unmoderated online platform that I think is primarily meant for law school kids. This CNN report also alleged that Neff had maintained a lengthy thread in which he had derided a woman and posted information about her dating life that has invited others to mock her and invade her privacy. So the idea is that somebody at CNN was inquisitive enough, I suppose, to go find who this dude was, figure out that he was using a pseudonym, figure out and track what that pseudonym was, and somehow tie it back to this guy in particular working for Tucker Carlson, and then CNN reports on it. So it's like CNN's investigative journalist to prove the racism of one of Tucker's lead writers. I don't know, man. Everybody's talking about it. Catch it for you tonight. See Tucker Carlson's response. Hey, last thing I want to bring up here is there is glimmers of hope arising in the whole COVID-19 situations. All right. So first of all, as the coronavirus pandemic reaches new highs in Florida and a few other states as well, this is an interesting way to push it too. The New York City health officials offer a glimmer of hope that they reported 0 deaths for the first time in months, which is great. That's fantastic news. But again, it's USA Today saying that like Florida's the problem and New York City's got it taken care of. It's like, I don't know, dude. Like, I think the numbers of deaths might show you a different story there. I think if you were compare the number of deaths, northeastern states compared to some of these southern states, which is what they're trying to do. They're trying to pit us against each other. They're trying to pit North against South. They're trying to pit Democrat against Republican. Even in the way that this headline reads is as the coronavirus pandemic reached new highs in Florida and across the world Sunday, New York City health officials offered a glimmer of hope. They reported 0 deaths. Now, forget about all the other tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of deaths that we're dealing with from these northeastern states or whatever. It's Florida really that's the problem because they're opening businesses again too soon. Dude, whatever, man. Compare the number of individuals that live in Florida with the number of individuals that live in New York City, or sorry, just New York alone. Now compare the number of deaths in both states as well. I mean, we can talk about the different variables if you want to of I don't know, density of cities, proximity to one another, the way they instituted certain things, traveling restrictions, travel in general. We can talk about all these things if you want to, but the numbers themselves do not exactly speak to the way that USA just presented that headline. But whatever, it is what it is, okay?
But
City,
Grant, the important thing now is not deaths or hospitalizations. Cases are the virtue signal important thing right now, right?
Yeah.
So, like, to the exclusion of all other data points. And unfortunately, a lot of the people who write news don't seem to have very high IQ, and they just jump on whatever is thrown at them as the measuring point for the virtue scale. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they're like, okay, so these are the points. These are like the likes. So whoever has the most of these is the loser. And, you know, I guess there being no deaths for a moment in New York City would be big news because they've had a constant stream of deaths. You know.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, dude, it would be fantastic news. And see, that's my fault too, man, for like jumping into that bias too much. It's just like it irks me the way that this is presented because I think ultimately, Sean, it irks me to the extent that, man, like I just want to be able to read a headline about this and have it be genuinely good news without it being some like saturated or laden with some type of, I mean, you know, some type of skew that I just don't want to have to deal with. Because you're right, dude. It is fantastic news that New York City for the first time, New York for the first time has not presented any deaths. It's fantastic news.
I said it kind of sardonically. What I'm saying is they should, instead of saying, oh, right, good news, New York isn't having steady streams of deaths anymore, they have to go, aha, we have deaths and other people don't have them. We win. I was doing it kind of sardonically.
Yeah.
In the same spirit that you're saying you didn't want to do it. But the whole point is people who live in New York should be celebrating that people aren't dying, or that maybe people didn't die for a day or two. Well, but instead, they got to go around pointing fingers at everybody. We're so much better than you. Because of today's statistics, you know what I'm saying? It's very odd. And to me, it screams of childishness, immaturity, and to be the kindest way possible, low IQ. I said low IQ on purpose because it's like, okay, here's the measuring stick. Today, it'll be different tomorrow, and we win based on this measuring stick. Ha-ha, because we're children. We're not actually worried about life and death. We're worried about winning on the recess yard, you know, or something like that.
Well, and there are at least a couple things that could be pointed to, not just lower death rates as well, but there's 2 studies out right now at the very bottom of the show notes. If someone wants to check this out for themselves, it's under the Evergreen section. It's like, you know, Evergreen, just we can bring it up at any time if you want to, right? The timing isn't absolutely crucial for some of these stories, but some of the stories that they should have been referencing or could have been referencing is one is Reason is pointing to 2 different studies that now are saying that we're much closer to herd immunity than anybody had previously predicted. And a newer survey from the Wall Street Journal, study, a newer study that the Wall Street Journal was reporting on that's saying the exact same thing, saying herd immunity may be closer than you think, right? So I don't know, man. There's at least some good news to report there. And being that it's 9:31, realnewsradio.live, check that out. I actually just saw Cody hopped over, I think from Facebook to YouTube, which is pretty awesome. Appreciate you, Cody. You're a boy, man. He said, if they want to get rid of, from YouTube, he said this, if they want to get rid of the media, of what the media would say makes the Washington Redskins name bad, just call them the DC Redskins. That's right. If you want to get rid of what the media would say makes the Washington Redskins name bad, just call them the DC Redskins.
Right, bro? That fixes it.
It does. That's true. Just call them the DC Redskins. Yeah, man. Anyways, Kelly said, nah, See, screw that. She said, see, screw that. If Don Lemon can openly insult literally all Christians and get it past, what are we doing here? The bodies won't stop burning. It's such garbage. Michael said only 7 deaths for all of Hong Kong with a population of almost 7.5 million. Compare that to anywhere in the USA. That is, yes, that is very, very interesting. That is very interesting. All right, here's the headline for today. All right. And I kind of would just do 15 minutes on this, man, and then hit the Libertarian story at the end, unless this just gets cooking, man. Because, Sean, I have fairly strong feelings about this President Trump commuting the sentence of Roger Stone. But frankly speaking, buddy, I don't know if anyone else does either. All right, so let me just play this out so y'all know what's going on. Here's the headline, at least from NPR. If you follow along in the show notes, this is another section that says President commutes sentences. Is this a major problem, or is this just an accepted practice? It's kind of where I think we are, and I'd like to know people's opinion. Is this a problem? Is it only a problem when someone does it that you disagree with, or is this just an accepted practice now? President Trump on Friday, again, this NPR's reporting here, President Trump on Friday evening commuted the prison sentence of his longtime friend Roger Stone, a veteran Republican operative who was convicted of lying to Congress about his efforts to contact WikiLeaks during Russia's interference in the 2016 election. That is a loaded paragraph. That is a loaded compound sentence right there. I don't have time to dive into all the reasons right now. Let's go forward. The commutation, which Trump issued days before Stone was to report to federal prison, brings an end to Stone's legal fight. Not true. Not true. His attorney has stated multiple times that they are still going to fight forward for the appeal. Whatever. Only further inflames the political battle over his prosecution and the broader Russia investigation. Now, the case against Stone was brought by then Special Counsel Robert Mueller as a part of his probe into Russia interference in 2016 election. Kind of, sort of. Not really, though. Only sort of. There's possible ties between Moscow and Trump. Now, Stone, here it is. Stone was indicted on charges of lying to Congress, witness tampering, and obstruction. That is all true. Stone was indicted on charges of lying to Congress, witness tampering, and obstruction, all of which he did, all of which he's guilty of, all of which he was indicted on. To say that Roger Stone is not guilty of these things, the White House didn't even go that far. I have Kayleigh McEnany's response here in just a second as well that we might touch on a few bits and pieces on. And they, at no point in the response, ever even indicate that the guy's guilty. At best, indicate that the guy is not guilty. At best, all they say is that Roger Stone believes he's innocent of the charges, and he's still trying to fight for the appeal. So one of the reasons why we did this commutation is to let him continue fight for that appeal while he's not sitting and rotting away in jail.
Or even more evidence for that. Robert Mueller had a quote, and I don't know if I'm sorry if I'm jumping the ball here, but he had a quote saying Roger Stone will always be a felon, and that's the way it should be. Like the NPR, that was fake news. They did not make him not guilty. They commuted the prison sentence.
Exactly. That's a great point. In
that NPR, they said it ended his legal fight. That's not true. He still has to defend himself in court for further charges in the future, I think. Right. I think there's still other things that they've charged him for that he has to go through the legal process for. And if he's convicted, he just won't go to jail. But he will be a convicted felon. On all the things, it doesn't take away any of that. So that was straight up fake news in that NPR article. And Robert Mueller even praised that fact that even though he was getting his sentence commuted, it didn't affect the justice part. He was convicted guilty, and he'll always be a felon. Period.
That's a fantastic point, man. Because obviously, I mean, the people are going to read this headline today that like Roger Stone just got off the charges. All right. Well, there's a difference between a pardon and a commutation, right? There's a massive, and it's exactly what Shine just described. Like, he's still guilty of these charges. There's a massive difference between a pardon and commutation. And at the end of all of them, man, it just means that Stone isn't going to be sitting in jail. Now, for some people, that's still like, well, then he's not paying his fair due, is he? I don't know, man, possibly. But it's like, did we care about it when it happened with other people? Do we care about it now? And furthermore, when the NPR is reporting on this, saying that like the charges related to his efforts during the 2016 presidential race to act as an intermediary between Trump campaign and WikiLeaks, that's also like kind of sort of true, but not really. WikiLeaks was releasing Democrat emails stolen by Russian intelligence. Now, we could have conversations about that portion all day long, but arguendo, let's move forward, okay? But
he didn't get in trouble for that. He got in trouble for lying.
Exactly.
He didn't get in trouble for being a part of that process.
Exactly, dude. And that's what's so misleading about this reporting, man. For those that don't know, the WikiLeaks they're talking about, I don't think we need to explain this to anybody, but in a sentence here, they're saying WikiLeaks was releasing Democrat emails stolen by Russian intelligence services, and Stone publicly and privately presented himself as someone with inside knowledge about the group's operations, like what day they're going to release this on so they can coordinate campaign strategy. I don't know. But what Shine said is 100% true. And finally, like 17 paragraphs down into the NPR article, they eventually get to presenting it this way. Exactly what Shine just said, man. Listen to this. He says, after the election, which the bold, italicized, and underlined is my portion there, added emphasis. But after the election, when Stone was questioned under oath about the matter by the House Intelligence Committee, he lied to lawmakers about his efforts to contact WikiLeaks. He also tried to prevent an associate from testifying before the committee. Now, again, we can have conversations all day long about the accuracy of those statements. But what is totally accurate is exactly what Shine just said. Nobody charged him with any illegality in knowing what WikiLeaks was going to do when they were going to do it.
Nor did they prove that he had ever those emails in his possession or gave them to anybody or received them from anyone. That's all very important. They just asked him questions about what he knew about it, and he lied.
Exactly.
And then they found out the truth. It's not like there's still some lie hidden under the bed. He said that he got it from, or that someone else had them. And that ended up being a lie. Mm-hmm. And then they didn't find out any more involvement that he may have had.
I know.
And or he also got in trouble for intimidating that person. I just can't remember that guy's name. He said, if you talk to him, then I'll like come get you, basically. It was almost like a threat of physical force, or it could have been interpreted as a threat of death.
Yeah, that would be like the witness tampering charge,
yes,
right?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So and like I'm being full, like I'm not trying to cover up for him or anything. Like he sent an email and said, if you talk to the feds, I'll get you, you know. But in more extreme language than he did get in trouble for that. And he was convicted by a jury of his peers with a judge and all that stuff, you know.
The Kayleigh McEnany's response, by the way, or rather the White House response in this entire thing, I think everyone's caught up to speed here. Just to give you some clarity, Adam Schiff didn't like the response, didn't like the decision. Neither did Senator Mitt Romney, but who's surprised by that, right? And the biggest part of the entire story is the presenting of what's going on right now is that, like, okay, so he lied to Congress and he tried to cover up for it type thing. All right. That's what Roger Stone was indicted for. Now, the response from the White House is you can read this, and we just don't have time to get through all this and hit this libertarian story today as well. But it basically comes down to the few portions I highlighted in the show notes here, saying, as it becomes clear that these witch hunts, talking about the 2016 stuff and talking about the Mueller probe and all this stuff, and which is arguably true. I mean, what did the Mueller probe end up finding? Like, yeah, well, I don't know. Maybe he tried to, like, whether there could have been some motivation to collude. Maybe. I don't know. Possibly. If you looked hard enough, you could find it, but I didn't find any. Okay, maybe there was motivation. Maybe there was willingness, but it certainly didn't amount to anything. And then at the end of it, like Robert Mueller basically said, like, yeah, there was no collusion at all, like no actual collusion. I don't know what y'all talking about this collusion word anymore. Anyways, they go on to say that part, as it becomes clear that these witch hunts would never bear fruit, the special counsel office resorted to process-based charges leveled at high-profile people in an attempt to manufacture the false impressions of criminality lurking below the surface, which I think is exactly what happened. I think that's exactly what happened. I do think that this part is fair. I think the Mueller probe kind of got a little bit desperate at some point and started to say, like, dude, what in the world do we do now? And I say that, bro, just because, like, all right, they couldn't charge him with an actual crime, so you had to charge him with some process crime. Same thing with Michael Flynn. You interview Michael Flynn without really telling him it's an interview, without really telling him it's a legal interview, without really telling him that he's going to be deposed for it later on. And then you just, like, you get him on some sort of technicality. Now, Roger Stone might have been a slightly different thing. He might have just been willfully lying, but still, a lie and an actual, illegal act, they're totally different things. Now, why do I say so much about the fact that I think it was the Mueller probe just sort of trying to gin something up leveled to high-profile people? That part is true. And they go on to explain later on that, like, I think people forget about this, but here's a quote from Kayleigh McEnany's statement. Mr. Stone would be put at serious medical risk in prison. He's appealed his conviction and is seeking a new trial. He maintains his innocence. Now, in addition to charging him with Mr. Stone with alleged crimes arising solely from their improper investigation, the Mueller prosecution also took pains to make a public and shameful spectacle of his arrest. This is exactly what happened. Mr. Stone is a 67-year-old man with numerous medical conditions who has never been convicted of another crime. But rather than allow him to surrender himself, like they normally would do or should do, they used dozens of FBI agents with automatic weapons and tactical equipment, armored vehicles, and an amphibious unit. I don't even know that part. And an amphibious unit to execute a pre-dawn raid of his home where he and his wife of many years were sitting there. Notably, CNN cameras were also present to broadcast the events live to the world, even though they swore they were not notified ahead of time, which, like, dude, nobody believed that. And not a single person anywhere believed that. CNN cameras were present to broadcast the events live to the world, even though they swore they were not notified ahead of time. It was just a coincidence that they were there together with the FBI early in the morning. All right, so, like, that's valid. When the White House comes back and says, like, look, bro, okay, like, fine. Roger Stone did what he did. This is the game that presidents play. My personal take on this, frankly, y'all, across the board, I don't like it when it happens at all anywhere. I don't like when this game is played at all anywhere. It kind of makes a mockery of the entire legal system. I think it takes the legal system and the standards and flips the entire thing on its head and says, like, hey, rules for thee and not for me, or at least not for mine. I think it also says, like, there was something definitely prearranged behind the scenes here. We're trying to get something out of this. We all know what's going on. Everybody's okay with this thing happening. So we're kind of basically saying, like, the rules apply sometimes, but they don't apply other times. And if that's what you truly have a problem with, then at least be consistent when you have that problem. And what Kayleigh McEnany in the White House is saying here is dead on right, man. They didn't convict him of anything truly legitimate, man. At least not in the traditional sense of what you'd be worried about, of like threats of national security concern or something that we should be worried about when it comes to a guy like Roger Stone, or so they would say. It's basically like Mueller didn't have stuff, dude. So he ginned up a bunch of FBI agents to have like an amphibious vehicle go raid his home. It's 3 o'clock in the morning, and CNN just so happened to be there. Like,
we
you're
know
trying
what
to
that
get some
means
headlines.
when they say an amphibious vehicle. You've seen like the pictures of the tanks with like 9 wheels on them.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they're talking about. It's not it's amphibious. It's one of those things from Iraq that they made like 50,000 of and then started selling to police.
No, I don't have time to fully delve into all this, man, because this just gets into a little bit of the whataboutism. All right. But if you want to hear a story of pardoning truly violent individuals for allegedly political reasons, check out the accounts in that Politico story and I'll give you a quick brief of it. I'll give you a quick TLDR because I really want to get some comments from our libertarians about this next story. But check out this account in full detail from the Politico story. A lot of prep went into this last night. It's great. It's a very, very interesting story of the Clinton and the Obama administrations. Again, understand, my point is not to play whataboutism. Instead, I hope to draw attention to the idea that commutations have become the absolute norm. They just have. True recognition that certain people are not held accountable is needed in order to even attempt to fix something in the broken legal system. If you think it's even broken at all, you may not even have a problem with this stuff going on. Both things can be true at the same time. That Trump helped out a political ally by getting him off of legitimate charges handed down by an overzealous judge, and what previous presidents did was far worse. And it should probably all stop. Here's the quick TLDR of this story, though. There was a guy in January 17th of 2017, as one of the final acts of his presidency, President Barack Obama, commuted the sentence of then 74-year-old, a guy named Oscar Lopez Rivera. He's a Puerto Rican nationalist who served 35 years of a 55-year sentence for the crimes of seditious conspiracy, as well as attempted robbery, explosives, and a vehicle theft charge. Now, it's not exactly the whole story here. Now, that next paragraph basically goes on to say that, like, there's a slew of folks on the left that were trying to get this guy out of jail for a very long time. Bernie Sanders, man. I'm talking de Blasio. I'm talking the guy that wrote Hamilton, the play or whatever, man, the Broadway play. Apparently he reprised or brought Hamilton back for a single night in Chicago in Lopez's honor in 2017 when this happened. So he looks like the left is going to paint this guy as some type of political prisoner that the U.S. just threw in there without any actual charges. But even Politico's saying, like, dude, the truth is way darker than that, far darker. Most Americans may not have heard of Lopez or the organization that he was one of the primary prominent leaders of. I don't even know how to pronounce this. Let's try it. Let's give it a chance. Fuerzas Armadas de Liberación Nacional. It's a radical national Marxist Puerto Rican independence group. They go by FALN. Explosive heyday, man. This thing goes on to catalog all the stuff that happened under this guy's leadership, under Lopez's leadership. All right. In fact, from 1974, when the group announced itself with its first bombing, to 1983, when arrests finally destroyed its membership base, the FALN, this guy was one of the leaders of, was the most organized, active, well-trained, and deadly domestic terrorist group based in the United States at that time during that period. This guy Obama let off. And Clinton tried to let him off, which is the real story. The FLN was responsible for over 130 bombings during this period, including January 1975 explosive in Manhattan's historic tavern, killed 4, wounded 63. In October of that year, it set off all within the span of an hour. 10 bombs set them off in the span of an hour. 10 bombs in 3 different cities, causing nearly $1 million in damages. In August 1977, the FLN set a series of bombs in Manhattan, forcing 100,000 workers to evacuate their offices. Dude, I mean, this whole article is just chock full of thing after thing after thing after thing. Now, according to court documents, this guy Lopez was one of not just the primary leaders, he was training other operatives in how to build bombs. Court testimony actually indicates from one of these people, direct court testimony says, I spent 3 weeks with the guy and all we did was make bombs every single day. This is the guy Obama let off, and this is the guy that Clinton let off. The real story here, if you want to talk about trading stories of whataboutism, of letting a guy off for some type of political motivation, here's the real story. In 1999, amid a significant controversy, the Senate denounced President Clinton's actions. Those actions being, he let off 12 members of this group. The Senate denounced President Clinton's actions in a 95-2 vote. There were some 2 senators in the country in 1999 said, yeah, good job, Clinton. The rest of them, it was like Bernie Sanders and one other dude. The rest of them said, Clinton, you got a problem with what you just did. He let off 12 members of this group. Clinton's conditional offer required that all these FLN members, quote, refrain from the use or advocacy of the use of violence for any purpose. Now, Clinton offered Lopez this same deal, but Lopez in 1999 refused it. Politico reports, perhaps it was because he could not in good conscience agree to abide by his conditions. For example, in a 1986 interview, Lopez says the FALN's cause is, quote, is a just struggle. It's a just struggle. And because it's a just struggle, we have the right to wage it by any means necessary, including armed struggle. We can anticipate more violence. Now, why is this politically motivated? Because in 1999, Clinton's clemency offers were undertaken by some strange, unusual political circumstances. At that time, Hillary Clinton was gearing up to run for an open Senate seat in New York City, which would one day lead to her Secretary of State position. She was gearing up to run for an open Senate seat in New York City, then home to over 1 million Puerto Ricans, the largest population in the United States. The largest population of Puerto Ricans in the United States just so happened to be in the area that Hillary Clinton was running in. Puerto Ricans make up an important and influential Democratic constituency in that state, and many accuse the president, like 95 members of the Senate, essentially accused the president of granting the commutations in order to drive Hispanic voters to his wife's candidacy. The story goes on from there.
Grant, can I give you one more Bill Clinton pardon that kind of ties a lot of the stories together from today? Do you mind?
Yeah.
Here, I'm going to throw this up on the screen for everybody. This is from KUSI in San Diego, so you know I'm not making it up. The Black Lives Matter movement partnered with a nonprofit group, Thousand Currents. This is important because the vice chair of Thousand Currents nonprofit is none other than Susan Rosenberg. Susan Rosenberg is a convicted terrorist. In 1985, Rosenberg was convicted of possessing hundreds of pounds of explosives. She and her organization involved in multiple robberies, police officer assassinations, and bombings. Now, here's the nice juice on the top here. Rosenberg was sentenced to 58 years in prison. She spent 16 years in federal prison before being pardoned by Bill Clinton on his last day in office. Now, Rosenberg is leading the fundraising efforts for Black Lives Matter through Thousand Currents. So, tying this, she was one of those 12 people pardoned that the Senate said they didn't like that. And now that's having a direct effect on the reality that we are all now experiencing.
That's a great way to bring this full circle, man. I actually had no idea.
Yeah. There was the police officer who walked her out of the courthouse was on Tucker Carlson a couple days ago. So I didn't do all the work, the background work on that. In fact, I saw someone, I think Kel in the chat actually mentioned that she just couldn't remember this person's name, but it was Susan Rosenberg. Bomber, police killer, terrorist, was pardoned in the same group. And it's like, if these people can be pardoned, then surely Roger Stone can.
That's kind of the point, isn't it?
Bringing it all back around.
I know, man. It's like,
because I'm pretty sure that in 15 years, Roger Stone will not be leading an overthrow of the United States.
I know, dude.
He will not be fundraising for the overthrow of the United States. I don't think he'll be doing that. But Bill Clinton did pardon someone who is actively fundraising for the overthrow of the United States.
Right. I mean, we just want some consistency. Here's the other stat for those that just care to know. It doesn't really necessarily matter, I guess. But President Obama actually holds the record for the largest single-day use of clemency power, granting 330 commutations on January 19, 2017. That was also his last day in office. So apparently the last day in office is just a day to write these things out, I suppose. And maybe it's just history or tradition. Who knows? But he also issued more commutations than the past 13 presidents combined, President Obama did. That is a real stat. Go look it up for yourself if you want to.
Hey,
President Obama.
Grant, it looks like we're probably not going to get to the Libertarian story because me and you have a hard 11 o'clock. But we'll tease that for tomorrow. And let's just do it at like 10:15 tomorrow.
Yeah.
But I think it's important to talk about like this power in general, because we're doing the whataboutism. Everybody gets to vote for president. So this power is not invested in some place far away. It's a power you have, that you invest in someone, that you let them be the steward of for a while. And it's, I don't know, it's maybe a leftover from the times of kings, to be able to do this. But it's also like, it's like Neo in the Matrix. It's the one thing that can be theoretically undo injustice, even as a symbol, theoretically. The whole system could be working right, but there could be injustice, and you can throw this out as a symbol. I think it's something that we need to have, probably, and continue to have. Especially with the country being so big, it's not... To me, it seems like there's going to be a few hundred people that maybe had injustice happen to them that a president can set free every term, every 4 years. I don't know. If you look in your Bible, every 7 years, they let everybody out of prison, So, I don't know. It's not the weirdest thing ever, and I don't know. I'm glad we have it. But I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there.
No, dude, it's a good point to bring up. And it's not like this is something that just unfolded over the past couple of years either. I mean, dude, it's Article 2, Section 2, right? I mean, like that's where that commutation power comes from. The executive power shall be vested in the President of the United States. Obviously, that's Section 1, but Section 2, let's see here. President shall be the commander-in-chief, yada, yada. Shall have the power by and with the advances to make treaties. President shall have the power, whatever. I'll have to find this here in a second. But Article 2, Section 2 is where he gets that power from. As a presidential pardon is a sign of forgiveness. In fact, if you protest your innocence, you're not likely to get a pardon. It's not a vindication, and it does not erase or expunge the record of conviction. When you ask for a pardon, you are basically asking for the return of your good name, and towards that end, you must convince the president that you have held a law-abiding, moral, and responsible life since the time of your conviction. I'm pulling this from just some random blog about what it is for this.
Well, it's important. I think you read that from the Constitution, because there are going to be. I've already heard that Nancy Pelosi is drafting bills to limit pardon power, and the legislature doesn't have the ability to do that. At least in my opinion, not without a constitutional amendment of some kind. They don't have the ability to pass law and limit it. In my opinion. Because there's no wiggle room in the Constitution about it. It doesn't say he can only pardon if, but for, a reasonable person would do X. There's nothing like that in there. It just says he has the power to do so.
The only exception is in cases of impeachment. That's the only thing it says. It says he's here. I finally found it, Section 2, Article 2, Section 2. And he, meaning the president shall have the power to grant reprieves and pardons for offenses against the United States, except in cases of impeachment. Right? So, I mean, this is constitutionally, given power here. I mean, it's not anything new that we just sort of stumbled upon in the last couple of years or anything like that. It's just to some extent, man. Like, I don't know, bro. There's a taxing power, I suppose, in the United States Constitution as well, but we also have the Commerce Clause right now. So I mean, there are ways to become violative, I suppose, of what the original intent or idea was meant to be. And you're exactly right, Sean. Like, there's a reason why this power is here, and there's a reason why it needs to be used. But it's just the way the headlines are going right now, dude. If we're going to equate every single thing that like a Roger Stone commutation was with every single thing the previous presidents did, it's like I can't play that game. At least I can't fairly play that game, right?
You can't, on one hand, say the criminal justice system is inherently broken and messed up, and on the other hand, say and people should be able to pardon people. Yeah. You can't believe both those things at the same time. It's supposed to be a check on the system, and exactly. I would say, I bet almost every pardon has been controversial throughout American history. Period, because you're seemingly violating a system. You know what I'm saying? You're going against a system that keeps everyone safe. So every pardon is going to be controversial. Mm-hmm. Every single one. But that's the point. And it's the point to be one of those checks and balances on power. It just is. One of those weird things. That's the reason I like it, because it is a check on power in a weird way, even though it's an extraordinary power to give one person. But they only get it for 4 years, and then you get to hire a new person. You know? Yeah,
that's true. That's right. Then you get to hire a new person.
It's not like a king who's there his whole life, and every time someone gets in trouble, he can say pardon, pardon, pardon. You know.
Let me hit some of these Facebook comments on the way out here. Eric said, the fact that they sent a SWAT team and CNN just magically happened to be there says it all. It's a waste of taxpayer dollars to do all this. First of all, they could have just called his lawyer. And since the whole thing was a witch hunt from the beginning, it should have never happened in the first place. It's true. Matt said, watch food supply chains. Wheat is next. Interesting. The pork we are eating now is the last of it, all frozen. From now, only imported beef and foreign-owned processing plants. Oh, goodness. CV is the cover story for now. Oh, sorry, for how they'll write history, at least try. Same families involved in the Spanish flu. Let's see here, saying he lied to a bunch of that's funny. Eric said he lied to a bunch of known liars. Whoop-de-doo. That's all right. That's valid, right? Let's see. Eric went on to say that what was the guy's last name? What was the guy's name again? Oh, the guy that we were talking about from FALM. Give me a second here. It's Lopez something or another. I have to jump back to that story. Oh my gosh, I'm not prepared for this at all. His name is, there we go. Sorry, Oscar Lopez Rivera. Oscar Lopez Rivera. This it's linked in the show notes. It's a Politico story pulling back from 2017 is when this was written. Let's see here. And Kelly said that Circle is still unbroken. Hashtag criminals with the emoji game strong. Eric said that just blew my mind a little bit. Didn't know that. Wow, an actual terrorist who is now running fundraising efforts for known trained Marxists. I'm telling you, dude, that Shine hit that on the head, man. That's the perfect way to bring this all back home. All right, that's the perfect way to bring this all back home. Like, what are the implications of some of these pardons? What are the
I don't like whataboutism, but I'm really good at it. I don't like it, but if you want to play that game with Roger Stone, Bill Clinton pardoned someone who is fundraising for the downfall of America. Compare that to Roger Stone.
Hey, my name is Mr. Henry. David Shine Thomas. We've got to shine off. We're shining off again, man. Shining off for this morning. Be back tomorrow doing it big. Love y'all.